Chris, thanks for sitting down with me today. I appreciate it very much. Chris, there is a lot of talk, there's a lot of reports that talk about intellectual property, the understanding within both at the farmer level, at the consumer level, at the industry level, that we are getting towards a better understanding of intellectual property, why protection is important, UPOV 91, but yet there's still a lot of resistance. There's still a lot of resistance to understanding why that concept is so important. Got any thoughts? What would you tell me about that? Why is that so critical?
Well, yeah, I think the concept of intellectual property is understood in some sectors. Consumers understand it in terms of copyright for music, trademarks for product, and patents for pharmaceuticals. I think when it comes to plant breeding and its application, yep, we're lost. There's a big knowledge gap. You know, plant breeders' rights came in about 1961, 62, and we haven't really brought people along with what we're doing. So the application of intellectual property, fine, but not in plant breeding, and we have to improve. And I think within our industry, I don't mean to be cruel, but we have a built-in complacency nearly. You know, we are just not getting the messages over. That has to improve. Of course, at some level, and particularly farmers may see it as a tax, but a tax is there, and that's intellectual property, to help society. So we do have an issue to get that message over, and that's a challenge going forward.
Is there big differences as we look globally?
Yeah, I think there is. In let's say, in a European context where agricultural employment engagement is at a low level, and if you take New Zealand, where there's agriculture is significant within their gross domestic product, there's a much better understanding. The supply chain, the export drive, there's a better understanding of the whole value that's driven from that, and the intellectual property, and the need for research. So yes, there are regional and national differences, that's for sure. But the message is there, we have just not sold the benefits. And now, we have, in some way, a dysfunctional value chain, in my opinion. And let's take the dairy industry in the UK. So the milk industry is going through a very bad time, or sorry, the dairy farmers going through a bad time. And I would nearly be suggesting that we stop selling milk. Farmers do not sell milk. If we look at milk at 20 pence a litre and water at £1, if we stop selling milk but sold white water, but that white water has added protein, added energy, added calcium, added vitamins, added goodness, and it's natural. In that way, we're extolling the benefits, but all the time we are under a cost and a dysfunctional value chain. We have to show the benefits, and the benefits of plant breeding become apparent through genetic advances. It's very difficult to get that recovery in cost.
So when we talk about farmers, they obviously benefit from intellectual property, a cycle of innovation that gets them new varieties, benefits in production levels, benefits in yields. We know that. How do we portray that so that farmers can see the value of creating intellectual property protection as part of that cycle of innovation, and have them understand that that's part of Farm Safe Seed is part of a package of that, but we need to have intellectual property protection.
Right. I wonder if we actually do know that as an industry. When I've asked executives at businesses and farm traders, why do farmers use Farm Safe Seed? The consistent answer is it's cheaper, it's grown. That's actually the wrong answer. The reason a farmer uses Farm Safe Seed of a propagated variety is that the variety performed on the farm. It delivered a profit performance, it delivered an agronomic benefit, it fitted in with the system. That's not seed, that's genetics. And we have to get that value over. So the reason the farmer uses Farm Safe Seed is actually genetics. What we as an industry have failed to do is to seed that value, to say here it is, this is what you've got. And in some way, we have to make our intellectual property, royalty, whatever you call it, much more transparent to the farmer. To hide the intellectual property cost in a global cost of seed is not appropriate, in my opinion, going forward. We need new business models. We need to be transparent. If a farmer knows the cost, then they can start to appreciate the value. And these are things that we have to take on. Now, that might be unpalatable to many in the industry, but I think we have been in some way complacent about, and our perceptions are maybe wrong. We have to change that. So we've got a big task in internal communication and get that right objectively before we move forward to external communication.
Right, agreed. So from time to time we hear talk of full breeder's exemption in patent law, and yet we hear others calling completely the opposite. Can you talk a little bit about that and what your take is?
Yeah, my personal view here is that breeder's exemption has been pivotal to encourage innovation, a wider application of the science, and affording businesses to access genetic material for the good of all. So, in my opinion, breeder's exemption should be available access. There is a concern that as global businesses get larger, that our whole intellectual property system is now coming under challenge. Ownership, ethics, access, and if we don't have open breeder's exemption, some of those things will rise in terms of argument, such things as genetic access and having that. So I think the industry has to work in a more balanced way. You know, plant breeders' rights and patents have served the industry well. But as we move forward, if we look at infringements where they are occurring, they're occurring within our own industry in a way. And so the systems now maybe have to be adapted for the next 20 and 30 years, because at their onset, patents 1930 for plants, there was no genetic modification, there was no globalization, social and ethical issues. Whilst hunger was still important, these things have to change, and we have to address that. And that's for the next decade.
Yeah, I think it would be safe to say that it often seems that regulators might not grasp the significance of IP within the seed sector. What things do you see the seed sector needs to do to properly portray that image and that necessity of IP within the seed sector?
Yeah. Well, for sure, in my opinion, there is an inability nearly for regulators at a global basis to keep pace with technological change. Now, regulators will operate under political frameworks, and politicians are there by public vote. So it then is probable that precautionary principles actually come there. So the risk factor of a regulator going to support advancement in science becomes very difficult because of this constraint they have. I think our industry has to prove and bring forward tangible, creditable information. But we also must avoid toxic debate. New breeding techniques and these type of things can open a field day for those that are against the science. And this is where, again, it comes back that we must absolutely sharpen up our communication channels. For an industry, we have to educate, we have to evolve, and we have to enforce. The biggest E in those three is education, and that is education stakeholders, our own businesses, right down the line, and we have to really up the dividend in that, and that is a big challenge in a world where the assimilation of information is now a challenge. So we have to be better focused and much more objectivity to what we want to deliver and how to deliver it.
And I think often we let regulators off the hook, so to speak, because as an industry, we are viewed as potentially not even agreeing internally.
Well, and maybe that's a good thing, because it shows the independence that they're not working in a collective way. So the golden rice, a prime example of something that could be delivered for the benefit of society, and yet it is the regulator that stopped that. Why? If we take the bans in Africa on genetic modified food, Mugabe as an example, did he ask the hungry people what they want? And so they will always be there. But we know all too well that they have a responsibility, but they don't take the accountability. In industry, they both go hand in hand. You are accountable and you're responsible. Right. So the precautionary principle is an easy route to follow. And perhaps maybe we've been too politically polite, but we do have to ensure that we have good contacts, good messages across our diverse range of industries, from field crops right the way through to veg and ornamentals, that the influencers understand where we're coming from. And to that plant breeding, where are we without plant breeding? Where are we without that advance? And it's a challenge. It's refreshing, of course, because agriculture is now well up on the agenda, and not just to provide the food, but to provide an amenity and to provide the decorativeness that we may want. We are a society in many areas spoiled for choice, but we have to maybe come back to some very basic communications and understanding the psychology of people buying and not understanding. I'll get on an aeroplane without questioning the engineer, the pilot, but when it comes to food, I have that concern. We must also set aside and understand the difference between seed as a physical delivery and the genetics, which is unique, and those are basics in that communication challenge.
Agreed. Well said. This is good stuff, Chris. If people are looking for some more information, where you got any resources we can send them to on the web?
Sean, I think you will know a lot of resources, and this is what I find is intellectually interesting. And for sure, we need to actually do much more desk and data research. I think your Seed World is a good example to be looking and following those things. We need missionaries to take our message out, and we need everybody in the company to have that engagement. Those corporate issues, but the whole principle of what we're trying to do to build a better society and a fairer society. And if it comes to farm saved seed, and just saying to a farmer, the reason you grew our variety as farm saves is because you liked its performance. It was proven on your field. Now, this is our intellectual charge. Is that fair?
Right.
And farmers at my level in discussion, they say, yeah, okay.
Right. Agreed. Chris, thanks very much for sitting down.
Sean,
appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.